My name is Matthew Ivani, and I'm a partner at Full Funnel. And my team has audited hundreds of go-to-market operations. This is from startups to enterprise-level companies. And in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 biggest growth killers that consistently slow organizations down and how to fix them. First growth killer, tribal knowledge versus process engineering. All sales and marketing programs are a series of actions that happen sequentially over technology platforms and human capital. The idea is that most organizations that we interact with, they never actually write down or build a schematic or a visual representation of how their organization's revenue operations works. It's usually tribal knowledge. Susie manages the inbound. Then you have Eric, who manages the SDR team. He knows how that works. Then Eric leaves for another company. No one understands what Eric did. Susie gets promoted. The person comes in beneath her, has a really hard time picking up the pieces. And that's the example of tribal knowledge. It's been my observation that probably 95%, if not higher, B2B organizations have no written documentation of exactly how their sales and marketing organization actually functions. It's an incredibly easy thing to move to a process engineering type of mindset, where what you're doing is essentially version controlling, where you will start with V1, which is wherever you are at the moment that you start doing documentation. And then every time you make a major change, you move to V2. Every time you make a minor change, it's V2.1, so on and so forth. The second is changing infrastructure due to recency bias. This is such a massive one, and this message is for all my CEOs or anyone out there that's hiring a sales and marketing leader. If they are coming in and you're using HubSpot and they say that they need to use Salesforce, you better have a really goddamn good reason of why you are moving systems. The reason for it is making a major systems change is such a massive amount of focus, opportunity cost, and what is effectively input cost to do so. And very oftentimes, my observation is the reason that that's happening is because a VP of sales had Salesforce the last 2 jobs. Now they come into an organization that's using HubSpot. They throw their hands up in the air. I can't work with this system. And then they try to move the organization on a Salesforce. Very rarely is that functionally productive. Most of the time, when that person who has then moved the organization leaves, the organization's now left with another new system without a champion. And they have a fragmented system from moving from like a HubSpot or whatever they were using as a CRM system, as an example. The third growth killer that I see is loading up on costs. It seems to me like every organization that we get into that has essentially had a failed outbound program is that someone came in, said they needed more leads, more at-bats, more discovery calls, and therefore they went out and hired 5 to 10 SDRs to sort of functionally do that activity. The thing that people fail to recognize is hiring 10 SDRs, as an example, costs a fortune. Also, if you hire 10, it's highly probable that 5 of them are not even going to be that great to begin with. They are going to wash out. And so what we usually will try to recommend people do is look at how you can build process automation and system architecture that will accomplish demand gen and outbound or inbound without adding people. Don't forget, if your program costs $100,000 a month when you start managing it and you increase the cost to $200,000 a month, you now have a $200,000 a month input cost that you have to now make money off of. And in the event you're not getting any momentum, it is going to bury your return on capital, and it's probably going to mean that you are going to get let go very, very quickly. In private equity, they joke all the time that it's 3 months to come in and figure out what's going on because everything's tribal knowledge, 3 months to implement a new plan or process, and then 3 months to pray before you get essentially knocked out because you haven't gotten any growth moving and shaking. The number one thing is like lean is good in 2026. Do not feel like you have to load up on cost. There are so much more technologically productive ways of doing things. As an example, for outbound prospecting, you could lever a tool like clay.com. You could take all the account executives that you have and build campaign architecture where using those account executives that don't prospect as avatars on a digital playing field. You can then automate their LinkedIn, automate outbound email. You can do this for a fraction of the cost of hiring an SDR. In fact, SDR specifically, you should not hire unless in 2026, the only thing that you're doing with SDRs is teleprospecting. If the telephone is not a productive medium for your organization, like you're looking for CTOs as an example, they'll never pick up the phone. You're not using SDRs, period, end of story. The next is giving teams too much agency. This is the fourth growth killer. There is just a reality that you're now moving into in 2026, the age of centralized orchestration. The idea that you're going to go out and hire these department heads and give them free reign and autonomy to do whatever it is that they want, hoping that they're going to get to the end conclusion, is literally insane. If you are process engineering your sales and marketing program, you have a working schematic of every workflow that's going on. You should have accountability accountability at a management level. And you as the CEO, COO, CFO, and any C-suite position, especially like a CRO, you should be able to articulate and point to every aspect of your revenue machine, know how it works, how it's functioning, and whether or not it's performing. Which really brings me to the last growth killer is people lack reporting. If you have a really well-built system, it's well architected, you're going to have incredible reporting because you will know the different areas you're trying to report on. And essentially, just like a application workflow and an e-commerce checkout or anything like that, it's about continually optimizing that process. So without an actual schematic, without having that process engineer type of focus, it's going to be very hard to create really impactful reporting that doesn't just read the news. The other thing that I'm a big fan of as it relates to reporting in 2026 is using tools like clay.com to aggregate lots of information inside of a table and then digest the entire table through an AI workflow to build qualitative and quantitative reporting on demand. So that means we're moving away from static dashboards, static quantification, and we're moving into much more contextual reporting to answer not the question of what happened, but why did it happen? Those are the 5 biggest growth killers that I've seen over the past 5 years at Full Funnel, and they're 5 mistakes you should avoid making if you have the opportunity. See you next time.